Welcome to the C Word, the Conservators podcast. Today we're talking about time management. I'm Jenny Mathiasson, an objects conservator based in Carmarthenshire.
And I'm Kloe, Rumsey, an objects conservator based in Manchester.
Hey guys!
Hello!
It's us again, and we're still on a boat. If you've listened to us previously, you will have noticed there's another boat-themed episode. It's not boat-themed as such. We're not talking about ships.
We will be talking about ships at some point in a future episode.
I suppose. We do sometimes talk about boats, like Peggy.
Yeah, that's true, like Peggy. But at the moment, we're still on a boat.
Yes.
We are very excited to still be hosted by the lovely
Pierrette Squires.
Yes.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And for people who didn't listen to the previous one, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, hi, I'm Pierrette Squires. I'm a museum team leader, conservator at Bolton Museum.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
/ thanks for being on the show again.
Always.
Right. Okay, so time management. That's the whole thing. Where do you want to start with this?
I think we should let it be known that Jenny has just saved some time by covering up the sweets with the plan. Quite sensible.
Technically, you can still access sweets. It's just that part of it is covered by a piece of paper.
Pierrette has provided us with a little box of gummy sweets and chocolate
Little
cakes.
box.
A big box of gummy sweets, cakes and flapjacks and all of the things. And
we're having a marvellous time.
Well sugared, I think, is the idea.
Just perfect. I was sort of seeing two sides of this being like time management when you're in employment and also time management as a self-employed person, because you might have to utilize different tools. You're working within different settings, different expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, we could start with employment because we've all been employed.
Let's do that, yeah.
And two of you are employed.
Yeah, I think also, and this is probably where it crosses over with the people management, time management as an employee and an employer are quite different.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And I've also written down things, well, made Jenny write down things like making promises and scheduling in, and how do you tell if something is going to take a certain, like, how do you know whether you can fit that many hours into a couple of months? This is the topic, so here we are.
Here we are. Quite so. How does time management work in... but let's go with your organisation first, maybe, just to not put Pierrette on the spot.
Yeah. So we have, as an institution, a sort of yearly programme or 2 yearly programme where we have an idea of what's going to happen. But it's often a fairly vague idea, and is subject to change based on various circumstances, which I may or may not go into, depending on how unkind I'm feeling. But there's usually an idea of, okay, so we prepare banners for banner hang at the end of each year and then install them. So we know we are usually busy October, November, December, January, every year doing one project. We also take on other people's objects for conservation, which raises income for the museum. And that is for us to sort of schedule in for income goals every year, and to the various client deadlines and things like that. As well as that, there's obviously, we'll do an exhibition and we'll be preparing for that exhibition. And then at the same time, we're also attempting to do core duties as well in that.
Income goals, does that mean you know exactly how many hours, therefore, of bought-in work you have to do?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
I am not manager. My wonderful manager, she tends to do the confirmation of, yes, we have time for that. No, we do not have time for that. And her mind and my mind work quite differently. So she, in the same way as measurements, somehow, is able to tell whether a project can be achieved. So since I started, she's always, been able to accept and schedule in projects by just saying, yes, we have time to achieve that. That's going to be, okay, so that's 112 hours. Yes, we can fit this in, but we can't fit this in until this time, and this can be the deadline. My brain doesn't do that. I mean, possibly might relate to the last episode we recorded on the boat with the neurodiversity. And so my way of dealing with that, she 2 years ago went on maternity leave. And so I, had previously been working out how to manage my time, how to say what I could deliver and when I could,
Yeah.
It started off with me saying, can I finish this by the end of the next financial year? Yes or no? My process, I should say, is break down the number of hours that I can achieve on practical work per day, and then how many days of that in the week, given holidays, given all of that. So that's how I do it, and that's how I planned a large-scale project that lasted a year. And from a sort of personal assessment point of view, it's pretty good. But I did work out that given the number of hours that we did actually achieve over the period of a year, we were working up to about 70% of what I said that we would achieve, if you see what I mean. So if I said...
Does that mean you overshot, or...?
No, we undershot, I guess. So what that basically...
It took you longer than you thought.
Yeah, basically. The number of hours that I assessed for was spread over a longer period of time. But that's sort of... The method is basically, I said I could achieve 4 hours in a day of, like, the outside contract work, allowing for meetings and emails and pest traps.
Did you build any contingency in for crap people are going to throw at me?
That, in theory, was the 4 hours per day.
Okay.
And what I discovered was it's actually closer to 3 hours per day for me and less for the manager, because obviously her crap that people are going to throw at her in a day is increased massively. Yeah. But then for the conservation officer was able to achieve more hours per day. But it's early days with my method of doing it because I want to make it really scientific, and it can't be. No. And it's difficult to communicate this with the higher ups, I'm going to call it, because if you say, I can achieve 3 hours of work on this project per day, they're like, you work 7-hour days. Why is this not more? And it's...
So are they asking for that level of detail of how many hours a day
they're
you're
not
doing?
No. They only have... when I've made it like that in a way. So previously, obviously with my manager, she's been able to say that if the work is there, we can achieve these things, basically.
By this date.
Rather than
within this number of hours in this number of days.
Exactly. But with potential, requests for increasing goals and, what can you fit into different things, and can this deadline from the client's deadline be met, it's become a bit more like, so how do we increase sort of output? Yeah. And no one's said, why are you not working more hours? But it's always at the back of my mind, like, I need to, in terms of project management, I feel it's really important to outline to people, like, you cannot spend 6 hours in a day bent over an object. You cannot do it because it's physically exhausting.
Yeah. I like hearing about sort of the learning curve.
I feel like I went off on one a little bit because you just asked me how I manage time in an institution. No, and I was like, this is my detailed process. No, but I have a spreadsheet.
This is great. I love this. This is great. No, phenomenal. I love this. Observations include, I wonder if your manager is so sort of experienced in doing this that it might almost be intuitive to them, in that they have a real feel for it rather than a scientific formula.
Yeah, it's more of a feel, I think. And
it can be that that's accurate because it's been honed over a long time.
I think, and in the past she said, like, I'm sorry, that she feels that she's not sometimes giving me enough guidance by saying this is the number of, like, this is how much you should be, but I've said no, that's not necessary. It's not necessary because it's just the way my brain works. If my brain needs to work
to
like
communicate if you just know something, how you get to that process.
Yes.
Yeah,
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Were you trained to work out your time?
Yes, but I wasn't very good at it. So at Cardiff we were encouraged to write down our hours that we spent on things.
Do a prediction of the hours. I get all my students to do it because often students aren't trained. Doesn't matter where they're coming from. I quite often find that. There is quite often a big discrepancy, but it narrows the more you get used to doing it and the more you know. A lot of the time people forget to plan in their head hours of how long it's going to take me to really look at the object.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How long it will take me if I find a problem to look at that problem. Mm-hmm. How long it will take me to walk around the lab and pick up all the different random crap I'm going to need to work on the
and forget things and lose my tape measure
and get the orders for materials you're going to need to order.
Yeah,
can take absolutely hours to get that right.
Yeah, in terms of sort of treatment plan proposal and that side of things, I'm so much better at it. I've got pretty good at judging how long a treatment will take in different stages of a treatment. I'm also quite paranoid, I suppose, about making sure that the materials are there and that kind of thing in terms of ordering and stuff. But then that's because I don't do much time ordering. In for that?
You make sure they're there, but do you write down how long that's going to take?
No, I don't. Usually there's enough lead-in from projects that we're already doing to be able to plan for the materials we might need. And because it's the type of work that it is, we tend to have roughly the same kind of materials that we use, so we have stock already. And if there's like, oh, this particular textile needs a particular type of textile fill, then that's something that sometimes will only come about once you've started the project and I know there's a big gap here that you didn't anticipate. So assessment, like project assessment, I'm pretty good at, but it's just knowing, can I get these 100 hours into a month and a half? And what will need to happen in order to allow that? Is that a bit more like how freelance time management is working for you?
Sort of. Sort of is the answer. I've always struggled with time management. I think it's because very few people have been able to teach me useful tools. And that's not a diss against anyone. It's more like I just think that maybe, again, because I'm neurodiverse, maybe I just haven't found the way forward. So I think like you, I don't necessarily struggle so much with figuring out how long a treatment might take me but I think that's reliant on experience in some ways, where it's like, oh, well, last time it took me about that long, so this one looks slightly more complicated, so let's add some on top of that. And it's quite an organic process, but I think more for me, it's sort of all the little things around it, really. Like, almost like you mentioned, Pierrette, in that I always forget how long it takes me to write documentation.
Oh boy,
that takes me a much longer time than I think it does, and I'm bad at costing that up because I'm not being paid by an institution. That must be paid for by the client because that is a baked-in cost. Because again, it's something I have to do as part of a conservator, and blah blah blah, right? So it's not the bit about how long the treatment takes necessarily, although that can also go massively wrong because
can't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Even with the best intentions and with 10 years experience, there'll still be things that blow up in your face and you're like, well, that
wasn't held together like I thought it was.
Well, it's going to take
and that'll always be the case with object conservation, whatever type of conservation you're doing. You can open something up and it be totally different inside than you thought, or you're taking down a different type of adhesive than you thought it was, and suddenly it's not soluble in anything.
Exactly. Or someone realizes actually it's not safe to do it in this way, so we're going to have to work around it.
Well, that's full of asbestos, etc.
Yeah, things can go wrong, sure. I think how I've approached time management is that, I guess, as when I was an employee, it tended to be very timesheet based in that sort of fill in your hours, how many hours have you worked, and I always overworked compared to the amount of hours I was actually contracted to do because I was usually part-time. In fact, in almost every job role I've been part-time, but somehow ended up working full-time hours, and then having the fun discussion with a line manager of like, so you've accidentally worked like 2 weeks more than you should have, like, and I really need you to take that time off, but also there's an exhibition on, so you can't really, and like all of this stuff, right, where the constant sort of chasing after days of free time when you can't take them and all that stuff. So I tried, and things like Toggle and sort of time tracking apps were helpful to show me how much time I was spending on different things. Because that was one of the things that I struggled with. And that did help, because sometimes it was just like, oh, the admin takes forever. I'm spending all of this time replying to people's emails because
that is the thing that
we could have had a 5-minute conversation, or I can spend 3 hours emailing people.
Yeah.
Which one's better? But, you know, all of these things, sometimes it's just that, you know, when you're trapped in the way that an institution conducts its business, that can be really difficult to change. So when I was employed, I struggled with those things. Where's my time going? Not so much treatment time, but actually getting time for treatment was a bizarre struggle sometimes. And arguably that's because I wasn't very good at setting boundaries. In that I should have probably just gone into the lab, locked the door and gone, I don't do emails until Thursday and I don't care what you're saying.
Yeah.
All of these lovely emergencies that you're all having, they don't really concern me because I really need to do this. But I'm not that kind of person, so I found that very difficult to do. I'm sort of extreme team member in that I'm like, yes, what can I do to help? This is something that we should all tackle together, completely forgetting that you've got your own shit to do. So learning to set boundaries is really, really important because otherwise you don't get your shit done. Yeah. And that's kind of bad. As for when I'm self-employed, it's been more about how do I structure my day, because there's no longer a structure imposed on me. And what does that look like for me as someone with chronic illnesses, and like what works for me? If I put myself first, this has to work for me. It's not about people expecting to be able to ring me at 9 o'clock in the morning or getting a reply to an email before 5. It isn't really about those things because this is how I work. So I make the rules.
Do you ever set your out of office while you're working?
Sometimes while I'm working, but often when I'm off site or something, so that people have an expectation of, I am really, really away right now. I'm not able to respond to this.
Because in busy projects, I don't very often do it, but I have done. I've done things like set an out of office that says, I'm in the middle of a busy project. I am checking my emails at 9 a.m. and 4 p.m.
That's a really good idea.
If something's more urgent than that, either telephone or get a message to me. Because usually if it's something more urgent than that, it's somebody in-house that wants me, that like something's leaking on something or something like that. And it means that I'm not worrying I'm missing something important because I've communicated to people that I'm not going to be seeing that thing.
That's a really good idea.
Especially good for exhibition work and stuff.
Yeah, it's often when it's been exhibitions or big object moves that I've done that.
Yeah. I'm better at doing it when I'm off-site or something, because if it's like, if I'm off-site working, like I was recently for 2 weeks, where I'm just, and that's like literally 9 to 5
and that's
doing
your job
object
during
work.
That time.
I'm not going to spare energy to then check my emails in the evening when it's my free time to rest. So then there's an out of office on saying, I'm not going to be looking at emails for like 2 weeks. Enjoy.
Which is also really helpful.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So actually, and that's been fine. No one's kicked up a fuss about that because they just see the out of office and go, fair enough. Yeah. This just reminds me of the funniest thing that I saw, because I don't know if you all remembered this, but there was a sort of a trend on Twitter for a bit in one of the stages of the lockdowns about what your sort of out of office email reply could be and things like that. And I really liked the extreme mindfulness that came out of some of them, where they were like, and if it's really urgent, please reconsider. As in, is it actually urgent? Have a little think. If so, you can call my boss. But like just the sort of delightfulness of like, take a step back and think about if it actually is important, or if you're just sort of being a busybody right now. Like you're just really powering through your emails.
Attitude can go to answering emails as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it actually important that you reply to it right now?
I sort of see your extreme like tired sigh there for some reason. What does that stem from?
That stems from my anxiety of forgetting something if I don't do it immediately.
I understand that.
Yes, I do. I try and do things immediately.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's, shit, that happened 2 days ago.
Oh, no. I have two extreme modes. It's I reply within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or it's I reply in 6 months.
Yeah, that's the concern. That's the concern. Yeah. So I just sighed tiredly because it's like, yeah. Which means you can control email checking for when you can do that answering immediately.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what's helped me, and this might sound bizarre, but this is a time management trick that another freelancer taught me on Twitter. He does a 3-minute timer. No email should take longer than 3 minutes to reply to, reasonably. So he sets a series of 3-minute timers.
Jesus.
And powers through the emails with a limit, right? Obviously, it can't go on all day. So he'll set a time slot where it's 3-minute timers. And that's the amount of emails he responds to at that time. And either the inbox is clear or everyone else can go away. Because...
Wow.
And it's really helped me. Because it means that I don't sit there agonizing for ages about how to best respond and support this person in their 5 million different questions. And instead, I can just be like... Here's a quick answer. If you need to talk more about this, let's meet up for coffee. Or let's do something else.
Yeah, okay.
Because email's really tiring, actually. Like, why would I even spend more than 3 minutes on that message unless it was something super in-depth and actually vitally important? In which case it's allowed to take longer. But 99% of my emails aren't more important. Like,
no,
they're not.
99% aren't. And I very rarely clear my inbox. I just don't have time. I get so many emails.
Yeah.
Most years, because I tend to work between Christmas and New Year, I have a bit of a clear out because there's a lot of people on holiday at that point, and it's a nice time where I can just clear things out. And if there's anything I've missed, which there's always something that you miss at some point, I pick it up, send an apology. I'm really sorry I've missed this. I've been really busy, whatever the thing is. But that usually I find if I've missed something that actually somebody really needs a response, I haven't meant to miss it on my sort of first thing in the morning or last thing at day checking. And even if I'm not doing an out and off office to say that's what I tend to try and check my emails at those times anyway, because otherwise I would just sit at my desk all day going through emails.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I will just pick things up, and if something's really urgent, people get back in touch with you.
Well, this is the thing, right? I was expressing this the other day because I had this sort of little epiphany as I was walking home. I love walking home for that reason, where you sort of process the day and then you let go and it's nice. And sometimes a little thought bubbles up and you're like, I like that. And this little thought that bubbled up was just like, I'd done the thing where I'd actually gotten around to replying to some really overdue emails. And, you know, doing the standard apology of like, oh no, I'm so sorry, I let this go for way too long. This is still relevant, etc. Here's an answer. And the number of people who do the same thing back, where it's like, oh my God, it's been 3 months. I just realized that you're not a bad grown-up if it took you 3 months. It actually happens to all of us.
Yeah, that's true.
Completely normal in a really overwhelming world.
Yeah.
And you should stop feeling bad. Because if it's really important, people will call you about it. Or email back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or in some other way remind you that actually this is important. I would like you to prioritize it. It's... not the end of the world.
So we need to be more patient. That's
with
step
ourselves.
One of time management. Be more patient with ourselves and with others. Like if you know very well that you've left an email for 4 weeks without responding to it, then also give other people the benefit of the doubt. Like, no, they're not just being rude. They are probably busy. Or
they are probably overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Overwhelmed or distracted or tired or off sick or, you know, like a million things.
And how urgent was the reply?
Yeah.
On the subject of email, that's sort of how I feel.
Yeah, I feel like I've had quite an easy ride of the email thing. Because I've been a manager briefly, providing maternity cover, but this was 2021 and COVID time where, yes, I was in charge of things, but part of that time I was on furlough, so legally not allowed to be in charge of things. Yeah. And the other times it was, you know, people, like various projects were on hold. I did some, you know, client-based communications, but a lot of the responses to that were, terribly sorry, I've been on furlough and there's no staff capacity. End of email. That was quite easy.
In a way, it was quite a chill time in some ways, because a lot of people were just like, either you agree to buy an out of office of, we're on furlough, or everything's closed, go home.
But that kind of permission you gave yourself to feel okay with, it's fine to say there's no capacity.
Yeah.
That should just continue.
Yeah, that should be all the time.
So that kind of, the time management of like feeling like you should be fitting everything in. Obviously, if you've got certain things you have to do, like work so many paid, externally paid hours or something like that, that's fine. But to then respond to whether it's people within your organisation or externally to say, we won't have capacity to do that bit until... Or... if it's something that's urgent internally, to say, I can fit that in, but that's going to take me 4 hours.
Yeah.
It means this other thing needs... What thing can I shift by 4 hours?
That's something that I've only fairly recently had people say to me about, what should I not do? Perhaps we should ask you how you do time management in your workplace, in your situation, because you're employed by the museum, and you manage the museum, but also a team of people. Are they all doing different roles?
Yes, they're all different.
So what's your experience with time management in that respect?
So,
huge question.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to fit everything in because we're so busy, but I don't find, for me, time management is something I naturally find if I'm asked to do something by a set time. I don't find it hard to work out how something's, a bit like how you said your manager kind of has this feel for that's how long something will take.
Yeah.
I think part of that, though, in my head is if I'm looking at a project, I will think, okay, I can do that in about 4 weeks. I will say it will be done by 4 weeks plus 2 weeks.
Ah, yes.
Because I always have a massive amount of core work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So it's not like if I've given myself an extra 2 weeks, I'm going to be swanning around doing nothing.
Yeah.
Because I never have nothing to do. There's always far too much to do.
Yeah.
But what that then gives me is the contingency space, which always happens, where somebody comes running in going, the ceiling's leaking onto the birds. Can you come and empty 10 cases? Or something like that.
Yeah. Just all in a day's work.
Exactly. Or somebody's off sick and you need to cover a different department.
Yeah, okay.
For me, it's more about what I always add on rather than necessarily the ability to estimate time. Because I do think that's a certain learned process, and I understand if somebody's new in the profession, it's going to take them a while because it's not an absolute science, and there's a bit of, obviously there's a science to how long it'll take to make up an adhesive or something like that. But objects do give you different gifts each time you work on them. And sometimes it's, that's dissolved much more quickly than I did. Oh, brilliant. Oh, look, it's looking sparkly and clean and beautiful, and I haven't got to do everything I thought I'd have to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes the complete opposite. And so some of that is you get a feel for, I can see that object isn't really easy to read, so I'm going to make it a longer estimate rather than it being a precise. And that sort of reading of an object, I think that takes a bit of experience to get to that level of being more accurate and how long things will take.
Yeah.
And even once you've got to that level of being more accurate, there's always surprises that get thrown in.
Yeah.
So I think if you're talking about somebody who's gone through that initial planning, and I think while somebody's going through that initial learning, it's so valuable, even if you're not required to do it for any kind of reporting, to make yourself a note either in your head or written down of, I think this is going to take me 10 hours and at the end this took me 9 hours, this took me 12 hours. So that you're starting, and you gradually over time that gap narrows. But I think the contingency time is the bit that a lot of people don't build in enough of. And contingency time for me does not include any of the setting up the lab, ordering things, writing up, getting things out. All of those should be parts of your initial time planning.
Yeah.
So there's certain bits of time planning that I think people forget about when they're doing their time planning. And then that becomes their contingency. And it shouldn't be.
I see.
The contingency should be for an unknown.
Yeah.
Like, it snowed and there's no transport to work that day. I've lost a whole day.
Yeah, because you've already bought all of the materials you need. You've already...
Exactly.
Or there was a fire alarm that day, so none of us could be in the building, and then we found the problem,
COVID happens, and you've lost months of treatment time.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So, I think there's that. With managing people time management, I think it's just almost doubling everything you're expecting.
In terms of time?
It takes up so much time.
Yeah. Oh, I see, yeah.
So I try to be really structured around having a one-to-one at a month, each month with every member of the team for the set amount of time. But while I aim for in my head it taking this amount of time, on my diary planner I double it. Because you don't know when you're going to turn up and somebody's had a crisis at home and they want to talk that through as well, or something is stressing them about something they're worried at work.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse in a meeting than like your manager watching the clock as you're talking to them about something important. Like, I know, but we've only got another 2 minutes, and it's like, oh, this is important though.
Yeah. Or that person's come up with a really cool idea for something to do for an exhibition or something, and you're like, actually, this needs some support because there's it could be really good marketing for the service or something else. That time needs to be able to flex a bit. And if things go well and you're not needing the full amount of time, there are always other things to do. Mm-hmm. So I try and build in as much structure around the kind of regular stuff as I can. And then, project management, I try and be quite tight on how it works. Delegation as much as possible of things that don't directly need my time as well.
So what kind of thing would you delegate?
For example, if it was something that needed updating every week for a project, I might start doing it, then ask somebody else to do it.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like, tracking what the progress has been. That kind of doesn't matter what bit of it, that sort of delegation of it, I really try and think about and pass on as much as I can. What else? I don't really use any tools or techniques. I use spreadsheets and tables and things. I like colour coding stuff just because I find it easier to read and to share with people. But that's just very much how I learn and how I like looking at things. It's very different for others.
I like checklists.
I don't really know. Yeah, checklists.
Checklists are life.
I like checklists. But it's sort of like a project management tool that Adam Savage uses, and he talked about in his book. That's about, he sort of half colours in a box on a checklist if it's a in progress project, for example. If the task is in progress, so you still see progress. And you don't get to like fully colour it in and possibly cross it off until you're completely done.
I think I've changed with checklists a bit as I've gone through my career, because I like lists. Like if I'm at home tidying up, I'll do a list of all the things I want to do, start at the top, just work my way down, don't stop until they're all done. Brilliant.
Yeah.
But in work, particularly when it's busy, I'm conscious I haven't always got time to write out everything I need to do, because I could spend half a day writing a list.
Yeah,
I do not have time to waste half a day writing a list. So I try and do sort of project planning for the beginnings of projects and something like that. And then if I'm having a day where I'm finding it harder to focus, and we all have them, I then at the beginning of the day will write down just maybe 2 or 3 key things that I want to achieve that day that must be achieved, and I will get those done. But I try not to spend hours going back through everything, finding every tiny thing that needs to be done and writing it out.
Okay.
Because otherwise, one, it's really stressful because there's always so much to do.
Yeah.
And 2, by the end of a day, I look like I've maybe ticked off 1 or 2 things, and that's stressful because there's still a ginormous amount of stuff there to do.
I sort of do something similar in that I had the sort of perpetual list of like, here are my tasks, and sometimes... Yeah, but sometimes you get to fully cross something off and it's very satisfying. And sometimes you just need to write the list again because it's too messy. You can barely see what you're doing with it anymore. Like, those are exceptions. But again, I seem to be picking up a lot of tools from people on Twitter. This is my life. Someone who struggles with extreme anxiety and depression that I follow, they said that one of their ways of structuring their day better in a way that they can sort of forgive themselves is to sort of designate it into chunks. So she divides it into 4 chunks. Each chunk has a task. So if the first one doesn't get achieved because they couldn't get out of bed because their energy levels were extremely low, you can still have a go at chunk number 2. Like, your day isn't ruined because that was the one thing you were meant to do that day and it didn't get done.
I like that.
And it's really helped me because it means that it feels more achievable. So it's almost like going, these are the priorities for the day. Like, these are the things that were really achieved.
So if number 1 didn't get done, do you just ditch it off and start at number 2? Or
usually,
would you move number 1 to number 2?
I've sort of written it down in like, these are the blocks that are possible. So if the first one is just like, I can't do emails today because my brain is just not wired for it today, then there's no point in trying to push through and put that as number 2 today because you're still not going to be in the right headspace.
Yeah.
So that just gets ditched, in which case you can move on to task number 2 and have a go at that. And usually that's enough for me to be able to succeed at task number 2, in which case I am absolutely ready for task number 3 and 4.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
And sometimes you have pumped up enough to visit task number 1,
yes,
potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Or that can go on tomorrow's list, because ultimately there's a day tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually it's really helped. And I don't know if that's helpful to anyone else, but it has been a really good motivational tool, so I don't lose motivation, because it's like, oh, there's no point in trying to do anything with my day because I couldn't write an email first thing in the morning. Instead, okay, move on to the next project that you've allowed yourself to do for this chunk of the day. It actually really helps. Well, it helps me anyway.
It's interesting because I don't think I've ever really thought about time management that much, just because I just do it.
Yeah.
Thinking about it,
and that's beautiful.
The thing that I usually do is, if I've got lots of tasks to do, I do the thing I least want to do first.
Yes.
To get it out of the way.
To get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Because then everything else is nicer.
Yeah.
It's usually finance stuff that I hate doing. I'm good at it when I focus on doing it. It's so boring.
Yeah. No,
I would so rather not do credit card returns or something like that. It's just, it's awful.
Yeah.
But I just get it done. And then I'm not thinking, oh, I've got to do this. This is the worst thing. And it's looming over me all day.
Yeah.
And then getting to the fun stuff. And also that means it feels like most of the day on the fun stuff, even if actually the thing I didn't want to do takes me quite a long time. It's kind of freed up the headspace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. I like that.
Yeah, serotonin boost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I work on the mega list.
You have the mega list
format.
Okay.
I feel like I've talked about this on the show before.
Mega list.
Maybe. Yeah, so it's one rolling list that every so often, when the list gets too long and I've crossed some things off but I'm still working on the same list, I turn the page and rewrite it, or whatever. I have a notebook and sometimes there's a list on it and on the pages and whatever.
Yeah, I have a notebook as well.
And that is so that I write down everything that I have to do, because of the way my brain works. I can't hold things in my head, and I'm amazed if you can work in a way as to only write down some of the things you need to do in a day, because I can't hold them in my head. I have to have, if I've got loads of different tasks to do in a day, I have to have them all written down, because if I don't forget something, I will feel anxious all day that I have forgotten to do something. And often, if I haven't got it in my diary, but I know I have to do it, I might go into work remembering that I have a meeting with so-and-so at 10:30 and have planned my day around it, and I can still forget.
Wow.
And so people know to just call me and say, "Were we meeting up with you or down?" Because they a lot of people have worked with me for a while, and they know that it's not because I don't care about it. It might be just that I've forgotten to look at my diary, and I forget to look at my diary so rarely these days that it doesn't often happen. It's a mistake that I've forgotten to write it down, or it's not on the mega list because I was, told that I had to do this thing away from the mega list, and I didn't have a chance to write it down. And I've started setting loads of reminders on my phone, but that really works for me. The list works for me because I can see everything I need to do, but it's also because it rolls over every month or so. I know what I'm writing down repeatedly. So, for example, tube order is at the top of my list. I do need to do it. I don't need to do it now. We probably won't be using the tubes until next year, but I do need to do it at some point.
I technically have 2 lists.
Okay.
One is just to do.
Yeah.
And the other one is on a rainy day.
Yes.
Which is where the long-term tasks like that tube order or equivalent
would
be.
This blog.
Yeah, where it's like, these are low priority, but they should be done. Or not low priority, more like they're not as time sensitive as the other ones.
Things like that. I really actively use Outlook. And the first thing I do in a day is I always check my Outlook. Routinely.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it's something like a tube order or something like that, I would not have it on a to-do list. What I'd do is, like a month before I need them, whatever the lead-in time for the order would be, I put in my diary, order this today.
Okay.
And then it's not only out of my head, I've given it a time to do that thing.
Okay.
And I give it so it's got enough lead-in to do it. And so then that time is committed. I'm not going to not have enough time to do it. But it's also not on a list of stuff to do. Because it's not really a project. It's not really something... And it's probably a 5-minute job.
Yeah.
I use Outlook quite actively like that.
I find this interesting because I'm awful at using digital calendars. I cannot deal with it. Yeah. And I think it's just because I'm sort of extremely visual in how I remember things. So having it sort of out of sight, out of mind in a different tab or closed down or gone away, that doesn't exist anymore. I just delete. Even though it's there and I could look at it, I don't remember to look. And I think that's a real problem for me personally. So I tend to have like a paper diary or like a calendar on the wall, or
I did for years because I'm really visual.
Yeah, so that helps me so much to have things written down physically, because then there's something about writing it physically that somehow it reinforces the memory, which is nice for me. So that bit really works for me. It's good that we have different tools because we're all different people and different things work for us. Something I really enjoyed when I worked in an institution was that I had something called circular planners. So it shows the year as a wheel with all the dates.
Okay.
These were brilliant. I downloaded them free off the internet. They were great. And I printed them like A0, huge. Because there were so many things that come around annually, like your pest checks, the next exhibition cycle, when the sharps bin needs to be collected or whatever. All of those things, they were so convenient to put in there in different colours and stuff like that. Oh my God, it worked so well because I could see the cycle and other people could visualise, oh yeah, it comes around again. And it's like, that's how time works. It's on a yearly cycle. But sort of like how disconnected people were from sort of visualizing it like that was really interesting. It doesn't work for me so much anymore because like it's much more ad hoc now because I don't have those sorts of like built-in things like this is when I check the pest traps and this is when I do that and that sort of thing. I can look at my pest trap whenever I want. There's one. It's there. Then it doesn't help me so much now, but it did help me then. So I'm just hoping that by mentioning it, maybe someone else wants to try it because I was surprised by how much it helped other people.
I've forgotten about episode recordings. Yeah. On a number of occasions, haven't I?
Yeah, not that many. Not as many as you think, I think.
Well, yeah.
Maybe 3. Yeah. Which is not bad, considering nearly 100 episodes.
Yeah, true.
Yes, that's a low percentage.
Yes, 3%. That's very low.
That's pretty low. I was in the bath once and I was eating scrambled eggs another time.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And one time I think we were just like, are you coming?
Yes.
That's the way it's really not been that bad. Scrambled eggs, bath time, and where is Kloe? That's it. It's not bad.
Everything can be a surprise to me, and so I can find it quite stressful for a reminder to pop on my phone, and even for like my personal life, call Boilerman was one of the most recent ones, or pay dance agent, whatever. And if I've thoroughly forgotten to do that, it can be a bit like, oh God, what else have I forgotten, kind of thing.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah.
I find that I don't really like reminders on my phone so much because they stress me out along with a lot of notifications. I find them very overwhelming.
Yeah, I don't use them on my phone that often.
I'll have alarms on my phone when there's something very important that I need to do, or something regular that I'm bad at remembering. Like, I try to do exercises from the physio 3 times a day. So those are 3 alarms that go off every day. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing. Either I dismiss it because I'm in a car or on a train or something, which has very much been what I've been doing today. Or on a boat. But the point being that they're always there, so I do actually look at my phone and go, I need to take a break now, and we're going to spend 5 minutes doing these exercises, and that's going to be fine. That I'm okay with. But that's probably my hard limit. I don't think I can have like loads of little reminders on my phone. Because I think it just...
Yeah, I don't have lots on my phone.
The phone's already stressful enough.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not just me that finds it stressful. Because though I use it as a crutch,
I find it a little bit too stressful.
Yeah.
So it might not be a good tool for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't use my phone alarms that much at all, but for some people it's essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, they're for getting up in the morning, although I don't hear it. But the cat hears it, and then he comes and wakes me up. So that works really well. Yes,
that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Or for something like our boiler, for example, if I don't want to waste loads of gas.
Yeah.
I'll put a timer for however much time after when I know the boiler, the hot water's going to be hot, and it will go off. So then it reminds me to go and turn it off, because otherwise I will just forget I've turned the boiler on, or I won't forget I've turned it on. It'll just be I'll be reading a good book, which is what it usually is. And then like 3 hours later, I'm still reading the good book, and crap, I've wasted 2 hours of gas that I didn't need to waste.
Yeah.
So, that kind of thing. But I don't tend to have lots of regular alarm reminders. Mm-hmm. But then I tend to remember, if it's stuff I'm doing, I tend to remember the things I need to do, unless it's something that's like an MOT that's once a year.
I'm not too bad with the once a year big life things like car insurance or MOT.
Because it always happens at the same time.
It always happens, so I associate it with a certain time of year.
Yeah. Also, like, it's autumn, it's MOT season.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
I also feel that time management in a workplace has to do with how we work with other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm learning as I'm at my workplace longer and longer. Previously, I'd never worked for somewhere long enough for people to really get to know me. It was more like me hiding the way that my brain worked. But now people know me enough to know that they can, for example, rely on my measurements, rely on my opinion, that I can be interrupted and I will do things at short notice, but also that if I haven't turned up to something, it's because I've forgotten, or if I haven't provided those measurements that I'm really good at, it's because I've forgotten that I haven't sent you the email, or like people now have that sort of element of patience with me, which is...
And that's the benefit of the longer contracts, or when you've had if you're freelance, when you've got clients you're going back to, it's people knowing how you work.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're a balanced individual for everybody. There's some stuff that you're really good at, that you're always on it with. There'll be some stuff that is harder work for you.
Yeah.
We all have different things like that.
Yeah,
and it is the thing that's harder with shorter term contracts, because people don't necessarily see that balance.
Exactly.
If stuff's going well, great, the project's going on. If something goes wrong, that's the thing that they will notice.
Yeah.
Or if it's done super well, that's the thing they'll notice.
Yeah.
They don't see because the stuff that just rolls on is actually usually the stuff you're really good at.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where, in an institution, when you're there for a long time, then people are like, well, that's the thing that person's super reliable at. I'll go to that person for that thing to be done.
Yeah. I feel like in my place of work, we've been on sort of panic stations for a long time now.
Yeah.
Like we've been too busy and too rushed for a while. And we've had quite a few changing deadlines, as you know, as something's been pushed over and pushed over and pushed over, and that's something that I've struggled with, because I've not known what the goal is.
It's hard.
But I feel that it's possible to quite easily get into the habit of going, well, I'm just going to do this for this small amount of time. I'm just going to work overtime for this small amount of time. Or I'm just going to, work till 10 a.m. Just going to work at 10 p.m.
Until 10 a.m. you definitely...
Yeah, exactly. It's going wrong.
Hope not.
But that's not time management.
No.
That's just...
Yeah.
That's just being a martyr.
That's an unhealthy work-life balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's partly when it feels that busy, it's because people aren't putting the boundaries in place. And I don't just mean the people who are being asked to do the work, I mean the managers as well.
Yes.
Aren't saying to their staff, if this is taking you longer than your 30, however many hours a week it is you work, you need to come back to me and tell me, so that they're facilitating that time management to happen.
Yeah.
Because otherwise unrealistic goals will always be set, because what you're producing is not 37 hours a week worth of work, it's 52 hours a week worth of work, and your managers aren't seeing it.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd be quite happy to, so long as and when I've got the energy, when we've done a big new gallery install or something like that, there have certainly been times more than once where I've met colleagues before 7 a.m. in the morning to have a massive breakfast, worked till after midnight, gone home, crashed for a few hours and started again.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. For a short, concentrated period of time, if things have been needed to be done for a couple of weeks, at the end of it, I'm dead on my feet, but it gets the thing opened on time, because that's one of those examples where if you've got a big published deadline for opening and you've invited lots of VIPs, you're not going to not make that opening.
No.
Not unless something really drastic happens, like the gallery ceiling falls down.
Yeah.
Nothing beyond something like that. Yeah. Beyond something like that, it's not going to happen.
How do we manage that time? How do we lessen that impact? Are there ways around this? And what the struggles?
So for me,
involved?
that's usually the exception rather than the norm.
Yeah.
So I can think of probably 3 occasions in my professional life that's happened.
Okay.
So it's really not the norm.
No.
And it's usually where some big external thing has impacted either a build at no notice, or somebody's needed a space for something, so I've had to clear a space at no notice, something like that. The big external thing, I think that it's got better through the years in that I communicate more about, well, if you're expecting me to do this, if I know that it's vaguely on the cards, it will take me this long. But there's always times where something doesn't happen. Mounts don't turn up for an exhibition.
Yep.
That's quite a common one. Now, I'd say with that, if you know a particular mount maker takes stuff really, really late, well, then it's getting them the data earlier. But it's, I can limit it by working with people that I know who are going to provide at set times or something like that. Those rare occasions, there isn't much you can do. No. And I think that's just life,
Yes.
There's times in life where stuff gets really busy and it's hard. What I would say is if actually, and maybe linking back to the other session we talked about where we were talking about disability and things, if you know that you don't, in your body cannot do that many hours in a day, at that point I would then be asking for some assistance. If it's an external thing that I wasn't expecting, I would be saying, okay, this has made a big difference. I think it's reasonable to say, can I buy in 4 days of help or whatever it is, and that perhaps ought to be part of the contingency planning for the project. So I suppose that would be a way that would help that. And I've certainly rushed to get some extra volunteers in and things, but I think if you can do it with paid work, that's the best answer, obviously.
Really,
Day to day, I don't tend to find that I'm working like that, and I think that's probably just because of how I plan stuff day to day. It's really hard to think about.
Do you find yourself having to say no a lot?
Yes.
How do we approach that?
I don't know, I just say no. I just say, I can do that thing, but it's not going to happen before the end of November.
Okay. Because I was going to say two things spring to mind here, because someone else told me that you can say yes, but you can say yes, but it's going to happen in 3 months' time when I have a slot open. It's not happening now. I'm not dropping everything for you. That's not happening. Which is an interesting way of handling it. And the other day when I was lamenting saying no to things, someone reframed it in it's just that you're being more selective about you're saying yes to. Sort of less about the negativity and more about it is time management in that it's yes, but with these repercussions or
It's not even necessarily a but. It's somebody says, I need you to do this, and I will go, yes, I can do this. The only time I can do it is from the 1st of November onwards. I'm not saying, no, I can't do that thing. Sometimes I absolutely just say, no, I can't do that thing.
Yeah, it happens.
Quite often it's, no, that's not my role. And also I think about the impact on the other people who I've said yes to doing things for. So
that's
if I'm saying yes to something extra, does that then mean I haven't got enough time to do the quality of the work I wanted to do on the thing that I said I would do? Or does it mean I'm not going to get it done when I said I would get it done? Then I'd feel bad about doing that.
Something I found yesterday actually was that I was meant to be doing a bit of prep work for the exhibition, but the mounts hadn't arrived, and they are due to arrive on Monday, so it's fine. It's not going to hold it up that much. But it was oh, so what now kind of thing, and it's in my head to be, I need to be doing this. This is the project that I'm working on. This is the priority that I'm working on. And it took me a little while, but I did then go, okay, well, I'll look at my list, the long list of things, and just select a thing that I can achieve from it. So I wrote a blog post for the website. What else have we got on the list?
I feel like we've actually covered quite a lot of them.
We have. I think suddenly priority is something that...
What is suddenly priority?
Suddenly priority.
You made me write this on the piece of paper.
I did.
Can you explain yourself?
I empathise with suddenly priority.
Yeah, it's...
Okay.
By that, it is... Oh, I thought this would be really good.
Oh.
Or somebody wants to do... The BBC wants to come in and do some filming. Can you have this ready? Or can you be working here on this date? And it's tomorrow afternoon, or hi, we're just doing this. Do you think you could just do this? Or, oh no, the gallery ceiling has fallen down.
So for me,
we have to clear it all out.
Those fall into two things. There's the can use and the must.
Yeah.
This one is like, can you just sort of level.
Oh, could you just quickly...
Yeah. So those...
Yeah.
If I have time and I can please the person, brilliant. If I don't, and if it's not a must, delegate, explain how, whatever the thing might be. If it's a must, there's water pouring through a ceiling. The Queen has died. We need to put on some exhibition. Part of the response, you know, something like that. And we can't not do it as a public service.
Oh, of course, the public service element with the Queen dying. Yes, okay.
So then at that point, it's okay. This is the priority. That's what I'm going to focus on.
Yeah.
And it's about, where I can, making it small enough that it would fit into the number of hours I have without having to stay late. If it's something like objects rescue because it's a disaster, it's a disaster. That's rare.
All bets are off.
Less rare than it should be, but it's rare that happens. Usually it's something like, not usually the Queen dies, but that type of suddenly an exhibition's needed for an event that we didn't know, or there's a dignitary coming and we need to get these things out. Something along those lines.
Quickly, the ambassador is coming.
Those things, it's more about the scale of what we do. So, you know, the Queen dies, it could have been we put on a massive exhibition. We did not have the time.
No, okay.
So the scale of what we did do was some social media posts, a couple of cases, a nice little display. But it wasn't huge. It wasn't things that needed conservation.
No.
It wasn't things that, or things that just needed a quick dust or something rather than... So I think for me that's then about communicating what scale I could produce for that thing. So a lot of it's communication.
That's a really good point.
And asking for help.
Yeah.
And just moving things around. Because it will always happen.
Yeah. And that's because I suppose in museums we're so keen on what we do. We also want to do a good job. So and we're interested in it. So I think a lot of the problems stem from the fact that someone will say, there's this really cool thing and there's opportunity, which would we like to do? And obviously the sort of reaction of the heart is to go, absolutely, that's fantastic. But we just don't, it's sort of all hands on deck all the time, so it's quite difficult to squeeze that in. So you go from being overworked to being excessively overworked in order to achieve that. And I think institutionally people are, like the management side of things, are looking into like building in contingency and trying to like allow to be reactionary, it's called.
Hello, Cato.
Maybe reactionary is a good word at this point. That is, it's the ability to be able to put on or to provide a service that is not in the long plan. Because at the end
you have to be a little bit reactionary. It's when everything is reactionary, and that's a real problem.
Yes,
and that's when it gets really... I mean, I think that's what a lot of people found with COVID, because you were having to change every plan every time a date changed or there was another lockdown or something else, and it was really... I think that's why there's this sort of communal stress memory from it that people are going to have to deal with over the next few years. And, you know, when you're in a time of crisis, like a pandemic or a war or something like that, that's the mentality people go into. But you can't sustain that for your lifetime.
No, you can't. If, you know, anyone listening to this is sort of working like that because they're an early career and they're, you know, oh, this is a, you know, 6-month contract, and if I do well, then I'll get a further 3 months or blah, 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 blah. We've said this before on this podcast. Don't destroy yourself in order to do that. It's not, you know, if they've got the money, they'll keep you. If they don't, they can't. And it's not about whether you've broken your back in order to deliver something that would just be nice.
No. And if you're at that level as well, normally the amount of work to be done and the timescales for it has been set by somebody else who has experience in it. So achieving it super early because you can drain yourself to nothing to do something will potentially could make that person go, oh, this is achievable in this amount of time, and not just on yourself, but is it fair on anybody else to put people in that position? You know, if they were willing to give that amount of time for a project, because that's a reasonable amount of time, which if it's a project manager, they're probably used to assessing that, then
What would you say to someone in their early career and they maybe are starting to manage, juggle different projects? Mm-hmm. What would you say to them?
I think if they're freelancing and it's juggling between different organisations, it's a bit of trial and error and hit and miss and getting used to how much your own time actually takes. And I think that is a learning curve, and there will be times where people work more than they should, or when suddenly they've got more time than they would expect free, and then they're not being paid for a bit of that time that they would hope for. I think that's maybe just reassuring people that it gets better than that first bit of time as people learn.
Yeah.
I think if it's for an institution, it's relying on others, and if it doesn't feel right, maybe talking to other people who've been there for longer to say, is it normal for this amount for it to be something to be either taking this long, or for me to be feeling like I need to stay late an extra 2 hours every day?
Yeah.
And it can be hard as a conservator because quite often you're the only one in institutions. So I think that's where networking with others in institutions outside your own can be really helpful.
Agreed. Ooh, that was a bit of an abrupt ending. Sorry about that. It is how it goes sometimes when you do live recordings. Anyway, we would love to hear from you guys. What do you use for time management? Do you have any tools or techniques that you like using? Not just for estimates, but, in general, managing your day-to-day life, all the other tasks around being a conservator that isn't necessarily just about treatment options. Let us know. We would love to hear from you.
Dear Jane, how do I manage collections care in my own home and protect things from the most destructive biological agent of decay known to humans? It enjoys casually pushing fragile objects off surfaces to create a bigger space to stretch out, particularly when watched. Dear P, thank you for your question. There was something of a clue about your biological agent of deterioration. But you should never make assumptions. It makes an ass out of you and me, don't you know? So although there was a cat emoji, you didn't say which your biological agent of decay was. And it did make me wonder. There's a number of possibilities. Obviously, a furry friend is one of them. But it struck me that this may also be a teenager, particularly one that hasn't learned to shave, or even perhaps your very own furry poltergeist. So I'm not going to make too many assumptions about it. But here's my thoughts. If when you come home, there's something that wants your attention, and if it doesn't get your attention, it's pushing things off your surfaces, things that you value, then it strikes me that whoever your domestic cohabitee is, they've worked out pretty quickly where your priorities lie, and it appears to be small fragile objects on surfaces. Now, as a fellow conservator, I do understand that. We do like our things. But let me put it to you this way. If you were going to write a collections management plan for your own home, where would you put stakeholder management? Because I think this is one of your key stakeholders in the house. And I wonder if your stakeholder consultation is falling in just a little bit short of what it should be. If this critical stakeholder wants more of your attention, and what you're saying is you can't give it your attention, then I would ask you to check your priorities. Perhaps you need to spend a little bit more of your day sorting out lovely, cosy stretching places for your teenager or your poltergeist or your cat, giving the stakeholder all the attention that they need when you get home, and perhaps then worry less about fragile objects. And then, because I'm always big on making an opportunity, if you do have some broken fragile objects, sweep them all up, make sure you get all the parts, label them all, and get in touch with the lovely, lovely conservation lab somewhere. Preferably, if you can't afford it, maybe the conservation lab of some students. I might know something about that. And maybe we can have a chance to get some fixing done and have a chance to meet up. So let's find the opportunities in every situation. But, you want to do a conservation management plan. If you aren't going to start with your users, where are you going to start? I hope that helps you with your answer to your question. Over and out.
As always, we welcome your comments, questions and corrections. This time we've got loads of lovely comments that we've just forgotten to read out. Someone asked us if we'll be doing wall calendars for 2023, and unfortunately we just can't afford to bulk order any this time, so it's not going to happen this year, sorry guys. But we are hoping to do them for the year after that, so keep an eye out for 2024 ones. Hopefully we'll be a little bit better budget-wise that year. On the subject of things you can buy in the shop, though, we do still have a couple of old Christmas card designs, and we've also got some nice little gifts that might be suitable for a Secret Santa at work or for a friend who works in museums or in conservation, so do check that out. It's seaward.show/shop. Anything that you buy does help us pay our bills and contribute towards keeping the show running, so thank you guys. We've had 2 people write in and say that they've successfully gotten jobs after listening to our job interview and also our portfolio episode. You guys did all the hard work there. That's up to you. Congratulations, both of you. But I'm really glad to hear that it helped somehow. Thanks, guys. And well done. Someone who wants to be anonymous writes in and says that they've found that the disability and conservation episode was really helpful to them as a way of feeling less lonely in the conservation profession. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We really, really appreciate that. And, sometimes that is exactly the outcome that we're after, that you just feel a little bit more represented. So thank you for letting us know. Lydia writes in and points out that Kloe should be able to access a UK scheme called Access to Work for her dyslexia, for example, and that is a good point. I can't remember if that made it into the disabilities episode, but Access to Work is a great scheme that is available for all UK conservatives with disabilities, not just conservatives. Anyone with disabilities in the UK should be able to use the Access to Work scheme. That is something that you can look up on the government website. And Lydia, we would love to come and visit you in Glamorgan Archives, by the way, as an FYI. That'd be super cool. As always, we love your comments, questions and corrections. Keep them coming, guys. We adore hearing from you. If you're enjoying the C Word and would like to support our work, then please consider becoming one of our patrons. For as little as $1 per month, you can help us keep our episodes online and more of them coming. Patreon helps us meet our regular costs for the show, and also to plan ahead so we know roughly how much of a monthly budget we've got. That's super helpful when you're trying to do something special, like buy a better microphone or save up to go to a special event. Your support also helps keep us free of advertisement. In return, our supporters get access to our archive of extended episodes, which you can only access on our Patreon page. Yeah, for that $1 a month, you get a little extra audio enjoyment. We've crunched the numbers, and it's about 10% extra content on a regular basis. Well, that's not bad for less than a cup of coffee, eh? If supporting us sounds like something you'd like to do, then head over to patreon.com/thecword and join our bunch of absolute champions. Thanks for listening. We're The C Word, and you've been listening to Pierrette Squires, Kloe, Rumsey, and me, Jenny Mathiasson. Join us next time for an episode about redevelopment. Maybe. I mean, I hope so. It's what I said last time, but hopefully this time it's definitely going to happen, speaking of time management. In the meantime, you can check out our website at thecword.show, tweet us at The C Word Podcast, or simply email us on thecwordpodcast@gmail.com. The intro and outro music is Spring by Didi Music, used under Creative Commons Attribution License. Additional music and sound effects by Callum Robertson. This has been a Wooden Dice production.
Deadline shifting forwards.
What have you just pushed off? Yes, he did. He wanted to stretch, so he shoved something off.
I'm going to tickle your feet again.
I will end you. I am the knight.